Alright, so we're going to go through this tutorial on this idea that everyone has a basic understanding of manipulating the tools and a basic understanding of Blender. Most of these things that I'm going to skip over are going to be things, or just brush over, are things that you can find 60-second YouTube tutorials on in regards to Blender. Inside the tools are things that you're going to have to quite literally just have to pause the video and follow along. I'll explain the best that I can. So we're going to start this off with the expectation that everybody knows how to unzip a file and import a weapon into their scene. So we're going to go ahead, import the weapon into our scene. You'll see something along this line. Your gun can come in a variety of different ways. It can come with everything split into different pieces, or it can come with everything separated as such. If your gun is split into separate pieces, it is important that you figure out how to get it brought together. In this instance, there's a couple things that you're going to do. So say that this piece and this piece are separate, and you want to combine them. All right, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to come over here, click on this. You're going to have to come down to this triangle, data. You're going to open up your UV map. Now it is important that the name of your UV map coincides with this right here. Alright, if these do not coincide, it will make things wonky. So you always need to make sure that everything is under the same UV name prior to merging them in with each other. Otherwise, you're going to pretty much all but have to start over. It's a huge pain in the ass to get it going back to normal. You could probably find tutorials on how to do it, but it's more than I'm willing to explain. If you have these two, as say this one's named UV map 1, it's quite literally just as simple as renaming it to UV map. That fixes your problem. Click on both of them, shift click, and then Control J to join them. Bam, they're joined. Bada bing, bada boom. In the situation of this gun, you're going to make sure that you separate your magazine. So say that your magazine is conjoined with the gun. You need to separate it. You're going to press your tab key. Hover over one of the vertices, click the L key. Up here on the upper right hand side, you have all these different globes right here. It's helpful to hit this one right here. This will help you check and make sure that you have everything from within that magazine. As you can see, there are pieces of the magazine that I did not get, such as these bullets, and then I believe that there is a follower in there, correct. Once you have that done, you're going to press the P key. It'll open up separate, hit selection, hit tab key, you're out. This is separated out. We're going to go ahead and rename this to SIG Magazine. Do that with all the parts that you need separate. Say it comes with a suppressor, you need that separated. Say it comes with a muzzle brake, you want the muzzle brake separate. Bada bing, bada boom, separate it out. Sometimes it'll be a little bit more difficult. You'll need to look in tutorials in order to do that. If you have stocks that you want to fold, such as this carbine stock right here, I have already done the work for you, or done the work on here. But basically the way that this would happen is that you would come in here, you would find what you want to actually fold, so the folding being the stock, and of course I'm hitting the L key over these and it's selecting everything I need. Going to come in here. You're going to click the pieces that actually rotate. You're going to separate those. Then you're going to come in here. You're going to find your center separation point. You're going to separate that. Make sure that you have this highlighted object, set origin to geometry. Now I got this beautiful little thing right here in the middle, and I can do all these different things. It's important that you remember to do the one that you're joining into the other one first, and it will put it right there. If I were to do it the other way, it'll put my origin to the other one. So it is always going to go to the origin point of the last one click before you Control J. Now that it's at that one, I can simply just rotate. So anytime that you need to pivot something off of a certain point, that will be the way that you do it. You'll find a common point that you want to do, separate it out, set it to origin, bada bing, bada boom, yada 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 yada. Probably would have been easier for me to just Control J that. So we got our gun. We got everything separated out the way that we want it. We're going to go ahead and take all the things out of the scene that we don't want. So we have our gun. This is what we want. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create an armature. Your armature you create by coming up here, you hit armature, and then you're going to come up here. You're going to go to edit, armature, add. You're going to add a single bone. Now when you're doing this, you're going to add a number of bones. All your bones are going to be like this. You're going to want to rotate them this way. Bones are going to be a pain in the ass unless you do custom animations for the gun, which is not too terribly hard, but for most people's instances it's completely unnecessary. In the instance of this firearm, it is completely unnecessary. The only thing that's going to be a pain in the ass is that when you're doing your bones, you need to make sure that the bones on here are in the same exact positions that they are on here. You can do that by opening up the XOB file, checking the bones, and you can quite literally see what bones are actually on here. The bones are where all the animation data is put into. So for example, I have a bolt right here. This is my bolt bone. If I go to pose mode, I can click on my bolt and I can move my bolt back and forth. This is the bone. There's nothing attached to the bolt yet, so we gotta wait it onto there. The primary ones that you're normally going to worry about will be W root, W bolt, W trigger, W fire mode, and W charging handle. Again, if you're curious, you're just going to go take a look at the gun that you're inheriting from. For the instance of this, I'm inheriting from the M16 since it shares most of the animations that this in particular weapon platform will be using. If I needed something that was more of a rifle, I might try the M21. If I needed something that had more of an AK platform, I'd do the AK. All guns are done this way. There are some maniacs out there that do not use pretty much Bohemia's base game things to help them do it. They're crazy. They're psychopaths. There's almost no reason to really do that. But, you know, if you want to go to the next level, you can. But if you're watching this tutorial, that's really not something that's going to be concerning you whatsoever. So, moving forward, you went ahead, you hit your add bone, you added it 5 times over. It's important to make sure that your bones are rotated so they are facing this way towards your Y. Not the clear Y, the actual Y. After that, you're going to go ahead and get them positioned however you feel you need. There's going to be a lot of trial and error in getting some of your weighted bones in the correct position because, again, they need to be in the same exact position as here unless you want to do actual gun animations. At that point, that's a different tutorial. There's a gentleman that does a really good job in doing that, and we can find the link to throw him up at some point, but it's Putty something, does a great job with that. So we've got our bones, we've named our bones W root, W bolt, W trigger, W fire mode, W charging handle. We could go through, we could figure out how to weight the trigger, we could figure out weighting the fire modes, the fire mode switches. Reality speaking, most people are never going to notice whether or not the trigger moves, and they're never going to notice if the fire mode is flipping. But the only thing that your player is really ever going to notice is this right here, the bolt. So we're going to go press tab to go into edit mode, and we're going to hit the bolt with the L key. You'll notice that I have it completely selected now. We're going to check to make sure that we have the whole bolt. As we can see, there's more right there. I can hit that and pull that out, and we can see there it is. There's our little thing. So let's go ahead. We need to get in there, get that. How do we get in there? Come over here, globe, flip that bitch, and then this is going to be kind of a pain in the ass, but check, make sure I got it. Got it. Cool. All right. It might be tempting to go ahead and just separate this out. We don't want to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to come over here to our vertex groups. Now, in the situation of this, vertex groups are under data. We're going to go ahead and in this instance, we're going to assume that all of this is clear. If it's not clear, you're going to want to go ahead and clear it because you only want to bring on the data that you have here. Your vertex groups relate to your bones. So we're going to go, okay, all right, thank you, add, please go away. Killing my vibe. We're going to enter in only the relevant bone information that we need. The relevant bone information that we need is going to be W bolt. You can go ahead and assign the W root to the rest if you wanted, but realistically speaking, all we need is the bolt to move back and forward. We don't have to worry about much else. Once you have W bolt typed out, and you have this here, you'll see that you have this assign key. Click assign. I want to make sure that your weight is full, and then that's bada bing, bada boom. Once you come out of edit mode, you'll want to check and make sure that you got this correct by coming up here and going to weight paint. With W bolt selected, what you'll notice is that the bolt is completely red. That means that it's weighted, and we can see this firsthand. This says draw, weight, radius, strength. That means that I'm going to be putting 100% wherever I click of weighting, and you see that as I'm drawing it out, all this would then move with the bolt. And to show you that as an example, oh, I'm sorry, I'm being silly right now. So let me go ahead and get rid of all that. We're going to go back to object mode. Alright, I'll show you how the bolt thing works here. There's one last thing that we need to do in order to do this. We're not going to keep this like this for the time being, but you're going to come over here to add modifier, which is this wrench. You come up here to add modifier. Click armature. Alright, armature is referring to this thing right here, but it isn't quite linked up yet. We need to come over to object, and we need to select this in particular armature. Now it's linked up. If I click on this, I go to pose mode and I select the bolt. Now as you see, I can move the bolt. The bolt follows me around wherever I go. Bada bing, bada boom. Then when I exit pose mode, it stays. Bada bing, bada boom. Back, back, and back. So we have our bolt linked up. Our trigger doesn't really matter, and this doesn't really matter. Again, if you want to animate this stuff, I would recommend doing that from scratch. There is a tutorial on how to do that. The next thing that we need to do is we need to set up our point information. Now, our point information is crucial for things like our attachments, right? And our attachments, our stocks, if you have a modular stock system, all of that's going to be important. Wow, this is kind of annoying. Where we're going to go now is we're going to hit... I'm just going to go ahead and add a new collection in here so I keep everything nice and organized. We're going to add in our point info. Hit add. Empty. Plain axis. Go ahead and scale that down so it's a little bit more bearable. You know what, fuck it. We'll go with right there. Alright. There are a couple things that we need to make sure that we do with the point info. Alright, so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to make a couple of these. The first thing that we need to do is we need to do our muzzle. So go ahead, make one, name it to muzzle. It looks like I have a bunch in here already, but that's okay. We're going to go ahead and get rid of all that shit and start over. So make sure you name your muzzle. You're going to pull that bad bitch right over here to your muzzle. The muzzle is important for a number of reasons. This pretty much determines where your bullet aims at from its spawn location on the weapon, and that determines your trajectory. It also determines your flash effects. So we're going to take this, since we want to make sure that we're doing this very consistently, since this links up with another point for information on the bullet. We're going to copy it, paste it, rename it to chamber, and then we're going to take this bad bitch and move back to the chamber. Now you can put it up here at the front, you can put it up here at the back, really doesn't matter. I usually go for the back. So we have our chamber, we have our muzzle. You can click both of those, shift click, drag it into armature. Alright, well, I guess it's not going to let me do that because it's a different thing, but we'll just leave that there. It'll be fine. The next one that we're going to need is we're going to need point info for our slot optic. Depending on whether or not you're making this weapon for RHS or Dark Crew or Bacon or whatever, everybody has a different way of doing things. Bacon had a way of doing things, and he tried making it interface with RHS and this old way, and he's got it working, but it can be kind of a pain. The main thing that you need to remember is that RHS puts their point info in the very center of their scope. The old Bacon way or the old community way puts a universal back point on an AR receiver like this, and then they position the optic in accordance. So on a standard AR platform, you would put your point info right here at the back, and then it would put the scope in the correct position in accordance with where it's supposed to be on an AR receiver. Sounds confusing. End of story though, for Dark Crew's applications, this is how we do it. We don't do it the RHS way because we planned on interfacing with Bacon. You're going to put your slot optic, you're going to put it right here. This can be moved inside the engine, so you just kind of put this as a rough spot. The important part of this is that you make sure that you put this so it rides right there along the line on the rail. All of our optics outside of one that has not been fixed interfaces just like that. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to do our eye. So rename that to eye. This one is important because this one determines where the player is going to put their eye, the camera for their eye, whenever they're using iron sights on a weapon. For this in particular gun, there are no iron sights, but you still need to have an eye position, otherwise the game janks out. So we're going to put our eye position in, very important. Next one we're going to do our magazine. So rename to magazine. On rifles, the magazine interfaces with the point info on the frontmost portion of the magwell. So you're going to set your magwell up right here, and however you interface this is how the magazine is going to interface with the rest of everything, and then you need to set your magazine up in order to meet up with the same point, and that'll get gone into later. We have a couple more empty points to mess with, and we're going to have a couple more to do here, so let's go ahead and paste ourselves some more for our application. In our application, we have a modular stock system. Modular stock system works off a rail, so we're going to do this a little bit differently than the easy way. That said, this really isn't that much more difficult how I'm going to do this. So we're going to give ourselves point info, put it right there smack dab in the middle. And then we're going to change this to slot stock. Alright, everybody likes to have iron sights, but backup or not, some people don't. So we're going to do slot iron rear. Copy, paste. Front. Who knows, maybe you'll put some wacky canted sights on it, or not. Two more empties here. In this scenario, we don't really need it. I'll just go ahead and take this front, copy paste, and this will be slot pec. You can change this to attachment top. You can change it pretty much however you want. You know, tit for tat, bada bing, bada boom, who cares? Then you're going to find your spot that you want this at. Again, this can be changed in the editor. You can decide to put it right here. You can decide to put it up here over the iron sight spot. You can put it right there. I think I'm going to go ahead and put ours right there. So this one's slot light. In the case of you having an actual attachment point to put a flashlight on this rifle, you can do that. I don't know if I'm going to actually set this up to have one on the side or not by default. Let's go ahead and see. What is it going to take to do that? Okay, we'll do that. That'll work just fine. So in my instance, I had a rail I could put right there. You might not have a rail that you can just put right there. The important thing is that the orientation of this point info actually matters on everything that you do. In this instance, it's completely upright and normal. Since it's going off on the side, what's going to happen here is that the flashlight is going to attach right now as though it's attaching to a top rail. So we need to rotate this 90 degrees. It goes on just like that. In other situations, you can decide whether or not you want to do a vertical grip system. In my application, I believe I'm going to go for, let's go for the angle foregrip on this one. This will come into play later on. If you're not doing something like this, you could quite literally and very simply just choose to use your default hand positions, but we're not going to do that. We're going to be coming up with our own custom hand positions. That said, there is only so far that an arm can stick out forward, so it is important to make sure that you don't overextend your length of pull. The arm literally will not go out so far. That boils into your stocks. A lot of people like their stocks being super far extended out like this. This kind of goes back into your length of pull. If you've ever shot a rifle, length of pulls like this are absolutely miserable. The closer that it is, well, the better it's going to be for a longer choke up here. But that said, a lot of people like that medium. That's cool, that's fine, it's whatever, but in the sense of Arma Reforger, that quite literally doesn't matter. What matters is whether or not your character can contort around the rifle. So we got our point info, chamber, eye, magazine, muzzle. We have our slots for iron sights. We have a slot for a light or optic. We have our PEC unit. We have our stock slot. Excellent. All right. And so now this moves us on to our colliders. Now, I already have the colliders done up. You can get your own thing of colliders from an Arma Reforger sample. You can make them on your own. The end all be all is that you need to have a UCX body and a UTM fire geo. Now this one is going to be kind of a little bit difficult for me to remember because I quite literally just use the same colliders on everything. Bohemia's own colliders sometimes look like this. You can always check and see what your collider should look like by looking on here. This is what your colliders are supposed to basically look like. As you can see, it's not very far different from mine. Quite literally, when it comes to colliders, the more complicated they are, the harder on the engine it is. So the simpler that your collider can be, the better. Your colliders do not have to be carbon copies of your rifle. If anything, it is very highly recommended that it is not. So, you know, you just make yourself something up like this, just copy and paste it over and over and over, and bada bing, bada boom, you're good. The important thing is that we get our colliders set up appropriately. Now there's a couple ways you can do it. You can download the infusion tools onto your blender, which is a tutorial on how to do that from Bohemia. In this instance, we're going to make our UCX body weapon layer, and then we're going to make our UTM fire geo, our fire geo layer. Let me go ahead and delete the old chamber and muzzle. Or, I'm sorry, that is our chamber and muzzle. Cool. Alright, so you got our colliders. I just set them up in here. I can show you how to set them up over here as well. From here, I'm going to go ahead and move this stuff out of my way by hiding it for the time being. what we need to do from here is we need to make our LODs. Now there's a bunch of different ways that you can make your LODs. You know, you can be an expert, a super GigaChat expert, and make them by hand, or you can do it the monkey way. So in the instance of this in particular rifle export, we have a couple of different designs I'm going to be going for the grips. So I'm going to be making a couple different lotted styles. There's a number of ways I can do this. I can lot these separately and combine them, but I'm going to make this simple for you. I'm just going to do one in particular lot for this application. So looking back at combining things, we have all this separate. We want this to all be one. We could do it, so we could do lots separate of each other, but that's a lot more work. We're just going to do it like this. So first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that none of them have the armature modifier. So we have our armature, we need to take this off. This will basically delete the rigging that we have here, but as soon as we have the armature back to this, our rigging will come back. The next thing we want to do is we want to go down to our data and we want to check our UV maps to make sure that they're all named the same. They are all in fact named the same UV map. That means that we can combine them without changing them. Click them all, Control J, they're all one unit now. Now there's some more things that we need to do before we can add our armature back. We have our SIG XM7. Let's go ahead and do XM7 AFG.001/_LOD0. It is important that you do a suffix of .001/LOD0. I've always done .001/LOD0. I don't know if you can just do .LOD0 or you can just put LOD0, but the engine does read the suffix and process your LOD data based on that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to want to add a decimate modifier, and then we're going to want an armature modifier. Now we're not going to fill any of this out yet. We're going to copy this, we're going to paste it over 4 times, and then we have all these different LOD zeros, 0.001, 0.002. Quite literally just start renaming these LOD 0, LOD 1, LOD 2, LOD 3, LOD 4. Alright, get out of here, please. Now that we have our 4 different LODs, we're going to start up here at LOD 0. We don't need a decimate modifier on LOD 0. LOD 1. We're going to change our decimate profile to .075, and we're going to apply. From there, we're going to add our armature in. Up here on this one, we'll make sure we have our armature in as well. You can always come back and add the armature in at any time as long as it is selected at the time of export. .05. .25. .10. Excellent. Now what we're going to do is we're going to check our LODs to make sure that they all look nice and good. One of the important things we need to do is we need to come up here to this arrow, overlays, and turn on our statistics. This will actually tell us how much this gun is worth. You see we have 23 on our LOD 1, 15 on LOD 2, 7,000 on LOD 3, and then there's our LOD 4. Now this is a pretty high vertice gun, and doing it this way, we're not really going to be able to bring it down that much. Some important notes, you see how this looks ultra jank. This doesn't really matter because you'll be this far out, but what is important to note is that sometimes when you do it this way, the textures will come out kind of weird. So you hit data, you're going to come down to geometry data, clear, custom, split normals, and just to show you that transformation again. So if I leave it like this, all of this will come out shiny. We don't want that. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. We're going to do that all the way across the board. Sometimes you don't need to do this, but better safe than sorry. You technically do not need to do it on LOD 1, but you should do it for consistency. The next thing that you want to check before you make your export, and you might want to check this before you do it, is you might want to check your color attributes. Now this is important. We can't have color attributes on our export. The engine does not like it when it has in particular color attributes put in. Sometimes this stuff doesn't make a difference, sometimes it does. It's better to just go ahead and remove it, as the textures do all the work inside the engine anyways. Alright, and so now we're ready for export on this in particular receiver. This is quite literally it, right? So we get our receiver together, and I'm going to make sure that the only thing that I have visible in the scene are the things I want to export. So you're going to want to make sure that you have your point info, you're going to make sure that you have your collider, you're going to want to make sure that you have all your LODs. Go through, double check your work, make sure that everything is weighted correctly so you don't have to come back to this later. And then the last thing that I want to check is if we'll go ahead and ship this with 3,000 on this. Any LOD is better than no LODs. You typically want to get this down significantly more, but I also understand this is a heavy enough gun, so we'll ship this with that. That'll be fine. We don't need the magazine up, so all we have visible are the stuff that we want to export. File, export. We're going to choose FBX. FBX is the file that it decides to read. I'm going to go to Blender Assets. We're going to create our new folder, which is going to be important. XM7. You can also export directly into the workbench, but that's an entirely different thing. But it would be advised to save space. This is just nice if you want to make sure that you have a backup, because if you delete anything on a workbench, it's gone. You're going to want to make sure that you have visible objects selected. You could also just select everything and do selected objects only. I'm going to make sure our custom properties is checked. Leaf bones is unchecked, and we'll uncheck bake animation. XM7 receiver. When you do your file path will be assets, weapons, rifles. Name your rifle. And we're going to bring it right in. Alright, once this sucker's brought in, you're going to come over here. You're going to go to Import Settings on the bottom right hand side. So you're going to double click, come over here, Import Settings, hit Export Skinning. Take a look at your geometry parameters down here at the bottom. You want to make sure that your thing here says weapon and fire geo and that your materials are set up. If it doesn't say that stuff, go ahead and set it up. This is the other way that you can do it if you don't have the tools installed. Once you have this stuff set up, and then it also has export skinning done, re-import resource. What you'll see is that we have bones, no bones here. Now we have bones. And this bones outlies that we have eye and we have bolt. And for some reason the eye is weighted, so let's go take a look. Interesting. Alright, well that won't make a difference. So we have our gun. It's in here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to end this here so I can go ahead and upload this. And I will continue this another time. When I come back to this, we'll go ahead and get the attachments in, and we'll start prepping to get the prefab put together. But right now the gun is in, it's ready to be put into a prefab. We can get our textures in, everything from this point. So this is the Blender setup that you need to do in order to get a weapon in. There are other parts to this that we're going to do, but this is the first step.